The deer I called 2-3. She's got a triple G3 on the right side that's like 8.5 or 9 inches long. Lots of history, couple of years of pictures. I believe it was October 20th. We were going to have our first major cold front. And we had a rain event, miserable cold. He came out, walked right down, hit the scrape, and I got to put an arrow at him. Chip shot 20 yards, watched him tip over into bean field. Pretty cool deal.
We are in Iowa, and we're getting ready to check out an amazing Barndominium house, chock full of giant whitetail, elk, everything you imagine when it comes to Whitetail Cribs. We're gonna knock on the door and see who it is.
Hey guys, I'm Curt Headington. Welcome to my Whitetail Crib. Well, welcome to Northeast Iowa. Glad you guys made it. My beautiful wife, Ashley, and I built this place about 18 years ago. And as you can tell, we built it with mounts and big critters in mind. And in 18 years, it's filled up pretty quick. I think when we moved in, I might have had 2 or 3 mounts. Everything else has happened since. I think we'll just go ring around the rosy and try to hit on every one of these. But the first 2 deer I'm going to talk about both came off a good buddy of mine's farm that we set up from scratch just east of here. A handful of these deer came from that farm. So when you hear me reference the El McKee farm, that's what I'm talking about. But the deer over the walk door, that's kind of a neat story. We had 2 years of history with that deer, lots of trail camera pictures, but arguably one of my coolest hunts of all time. Truthfully, I think he was 4 when I killed him, but he was out probably 200-ish yards away in a CRP field, and I rattled at him, and it was one of those picture perfect, read the script or whatever. He literally come running into me, and everything happened so fast I didn't get a crack at him. He reappeared. I rattled again. He came right back in and walked in, and I clicked my Tacticam on. I shot him at like 20 yards, watched him die in 40, but just one of those picture perfect hunts. It was a crisp, beautiful November morning, and I no more than shot him. I think about within 10 minutes of him expiring, I killed 2 coyotes back to back. So it was just a very memorable hunt. Definitely not my, one of my biggest deer, but for sure one of the coolest hunts I've ever had. This deer, he was known as the Big 10. We literally had 5 or 6 years of history with this deer. So I'm very adamant he was probably 8 when I shot him. Funny story, good buddy of mine was up for shotgun season. I'm pretty diehard bow hunter, but we were going to go over there, jump in a blind opening morning and do a little gun hunting. So I did have a tag, but I'll be honest, the night before was my wife's Christmas party, and I was a little rough. Probably shouldn't have been driving that morning to even get over there, but in either case, went hunting. First light, he appeared. I hadn't got a crack at him in 2 years. There he was. I got the gun out the window, probably an 80-yard shot, perfect hit. The most impressive thing of this deer outside of his age, definitely not his score, but when I got to him, just the physical size of the deer was like unbelievable. It looked like a man's chest, and I just remember even cutting up to his sternum and stuff. It was just, wish I'd have weighed him. For sure that deer was over 300 pounds on the hoof, but pretty cool, and probably, if not the most mature deer I've ever taken, for sure top 2, and dang sure the biggest deer I've ever killed. Deer 3 that I'm going to cover, he came from right here where we're, I shot him probably 200 yards south of where we're literally standing. Fun thing, same thing, some history there. We had 2 or 3 years of history. Pretty adamant he'd have been a 5-year-old. He came out late season. That's one that I did shoot with a muzzleloader. He was coming out consistently into one of my bean plots, and I contemplated letting him go because I do think he probably would have made it, but in reality that deer is right at 170 gross, so in hindsight I'm pretty glad I took him. Funny story about this deer is he used to hang over directly over our bathroom door, and one day after school my daughters got home, and being sisters and girls, I don't know, they were arguing, a door got slammed, that deer came down off the wall, tines down, gouged our wood floor, just missed my youngest daughter, thankfully, and broke a couple tines. So he's actually glued back together, but kind of something I'll never forget probably from now until the end of time. And I'm sure neither of my daughters will either, because they knew I was pretty serious when I got home that day. You hear guys talk about, we're pretty fortunate here in Iowa. You can, as a landowner, you can actually take 3 bucks in a season. I don't know if I've ever done that, maybe 3, including a management deer or something, but the 2 above me that I'm about to cover cover. I got both them in about a 10-day span, both with a bow. The first one is the deer I called 2-3. As you'll notice, he's got a triple G3 on the right side that's like 8.5 or 9 inches long. Pretty neat deal with him. Same thing, lots of history, couple years of pictures, and I had him dead patterned to an apple tree, and I knew the apples were going to be done before I could hunt him, so I actually made a mock scrape about 75, 80 yards up the field edge from where that tree was, and sure enough, he found it. Well, fast forward, season always starts October 1st. I believe it was October 20th. We were going to have our first major cold front, and we had a rain event. And I remember telling my wife, I said, I have got to be in that tree stand after that rain stops. Well, it stopped overnight, so I did sneak in there. Usually I wouldn't hunt mornings that early in October, but I chose to. Sat that scrape in that stand. It was miserable, cold, windy, didn't see the deer. So what I did was I left all my stuff in the tree stand, snuck out of there for a couple hours, grabbed some lunch, whatever, made some phone calls for work. And then I got right back in there that afternoon, and sure enough, he came out, literally walked right down, hit the scrape that I knew he was going to hit or freshen, and I got to put an arrow at him. Same thing, chip shot 20 yards, watched him tip over in the bean field. Pretty cool deal. Fast forward about 12 days, what I would consider my headliner, deer we called Turkey Foot right here on my farm. Again, lots of history. Very adamant that deer was 6 or 7 when I shot him. A little deceiving, and you guys would probably be able to see this. He's an Angles deer, right? So I would have put that deer like in the 180s. Based on all the intel we had on him. What I didn't realize is he was going to end up being the smallest bodied deer I've ever taken. So even when they're old, even when they're super mature, it doesn't mean they're going to be big. I think they're just like us. You know, some people are little, some people are big. He was tiny. And same thing, I never weighed him, but I'd bet just about any amount of money that deer wasn't more than 150 pounds on the hoof. So it was a little deceiving, and I'll be honest, it was a little disappointing. Like, his rack wasn't as big as I thought it was, but relative to his body, it looked unbelievable. Even on the video, I took some Tacticam footage of him when I took him, and he looked huge. And then when we recovered him, slight disappointment, but in either case, I mounted him on a super small form, because it's just part of the story, and that deer's so unique. Depending which angle you're looking at, he's a pretty awesome deer, and I'm very proud of him. And like I said, those two both went down with the bow within about a 2-week window of each other. So kind of a neat story. All right, we're moving on to my headliner. Neat story on this. It's a deer that we had named the Wide 10. I know, super creative, but he's my headliner. I think I've shot 12 deer, I think, that will gross 170 or better. He's my best, and he's my only one that nets Boone and Crockett. So he grosses like 177, or maybe it was 178 and change. But he nets 171 and change. So he's my only true net Boone and Crockett. Like I said, I think I got 11 other deer over 170 gross, but neat story with him too. Lot of history, a lot of pictures. Knew about him for multiple years, but the year, believe it or not, the year I took him, he was my number 3 deer on my hit list. I was chasing a giant 200 plus inch deer that I think we're going to get into that and tell that story, because it's a pretty crazy story. I had another deer on a lease just east of where I took him that was even bigger, probably like a mid-80s typical. The year I killed Wide 10, he was literally the number 3 buck on my hit list. It was just one of those years where the moon and stars aligned, and voila. But I had taken a break from hunting my super big deer. You guys might laugh at this, but it was super windy that day, so I chose to jump in a blind, one of my late season blinds. I think I might have packed a couple beers in my backpack. I was just going to go have a relaxing sit, and I get there, look across my food plot, and sure enough, he's in there with another buck posturing, and I kind of figured it out that they had a doe pinned down in there. It was mid-November, so I watched him a bunch for probably the first hour, and then he ended up walking the gauntlet literally right to me. I shot him at like 22 yards, hit him a little far back, not crazy like guts, but I knew it was probably going to be liver. We let him go to the next day and recovered him right away about 100 yards from where I shot him. But that is my headliner. The one right next to it, kind of a neat deal. The woman in my life that allows me to do this and is super supportive, my beautiful wife, Ashley, that's her first archery buck. And she actually shot it out of the exact same blind. And I'm super proud of this story because it may have even been the first time she ever even sat alone. She'd hunted, with me multiple times for sure. And we've had some pretty cool hunting stories, sharing a tree stand or whatever. But that night she went and hunted it on her own. I went to a different side of the farm and I got a text that she shot a nice buck. Well, come to find out, she shot him at like 42 yards. Pretty neat deal, but that's my wife Ashley's first buck. Real nice, tall, kind of a narrow thing, but I'm super proud of that and kind of neat that they both came out of the same location, same food plot. The deer here, I just took him late season last year. As you can see, he's got a pretty funky G2 thing going on there. I don't even know what you'd call it, but it's literally 15 inches. And that deer and I played cat and mouse all bow season last year. I seen him probably a half dozen times. When I needed him to zig, he would zag and that sort of thing. So I seen him a ton, just never had a chance to get close enough to put an arrow in him. So late muzzleloader, the score he walked out. Hammered him close, probably 110 yards. Got some pretty cool Tacticam footage of that happening, but just a real unique buck. Not a super high scoring deer. I think he's, if I remember right, I ran a tape into like the low 60s with him, but super heavy. He's got an extra little sticker point off his base. Just a unique buck and one that I wasn't going to pass. Kind of wanted him out of there anyway and had a lot of fun hunting him. This deer I'm super proud of. And I'm super proud because my daughter, Addie, shot this when she was 10 years old. It was her first youth buck. Pretty neat story. We're good friends with Mark Heck of the Give and Right. One of my best buddies, Gerpsy, Chris Van Gerpen, is Mark's farm manager and has been for years and years and years. They manage extensively and they knew Addie, was up to bat or going to go hunting that year. So her and I'd spent a lot of time that summer shooting and getting her acclimated using a scope. And I had a little 1187 Remington 20 gauge youth model and we had it absolutely just tack driving. And Gerpsy called and said, hey, we got a bully buck. If Addie'd be willing to come over, she'd be more than happy to, or we'd be more than happy to put her on it, take her hunting. So Add and I ran over there. I think she had volleyball practice or something that day, but this deer, they had him patterned almost to a T. And we went over, had an amazing hunt, seen 20 some bucks that night. And she ended up making a 154 yard shot on that deer. And you would have swore she shot it with a big caliber rifle because she hit it high shoulder and it literally just crumbled. All right on video, but yeah, pretty proud dad moment because she was cool. I mean, literally just cool as a cucumber. You'd have thought she'd shot 50 deer. But she was that mentally dialed and made it happen. So pretty proud dad moment on that one. This next one, pretty neat deal. Same thing. This deer probably went down 200 yards from where we're standing. Another one of my late muzzleloader deer in a food plot. That year, I rotate basically every year. What was corn's going to beans and vice versa. With my agronomy background, I can't do corn on corn or beans on beans. It just wears me out and freaks me out about diseases and everything else. So that year it happened to be corn down there. But this deer, kind of a neat deal. I had a series of pictures of him right in November, like during the peak of the rut. And I don't remember if it was the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever. But in that time frame, he came through the farm at one point, and I probably got a half dozen pictures of him just in like a 48-hour window. So certainly he'd either brought a doe in here and locked her down, or he came in and found a doe and stayed for, like I said, a couple days. And I did get some pictures, but this is pre-cell cams and everything, so I didn't know about that until afterward. And then lo and behold, fast forward, now it was late December if I remember right, but I checked my cameras and I think it was Christmas Eve night. I had a picture of him like in the background, like there's probably 15 or 20 deer in my food plot and he was in the periphery, but I was almost adamant it was the one I had from November. And sure enough, I had to wait for a south wind, but the first night I had a south wind, I went down there. He came out literally right at last light, made a good shot. He barely made it off the field, but pretty good deer. He's a slick 6x5, runs a tape into the low 70s. One of my booners, or one of my gross booners that I'm pretty proud of. And with it happening on your own farm, it just has even a little better feel to it. So pretty proud of that one too. Been real fortunate to get to hunt out west quite a bit in my hunting career, I guess. A couple of my bigger elk here. The first one, this 7x8, I shot him I guess it would have been the year we built this place. So call it 18 years ago, but it was my first archery elk. And neat deal because I'd actually hit one in the shoulder that morning. Probably knew it wasn't fatal, but I felt like I had to go back there that night and try to follow up. And sure enough, this bull and the one I had actually shot locked up or almost locked up like they were going to fight. And he actually shoot off the other bull. And then he ended up walking by me and put a good arrow in him. He ran out and did a big horseshoe, and I shot him again, actually, and it kind of went through both, the front brisket area and both legs, but he laid down and expired. That bull's 349 and change. We'd call it 350, but pretty neat to say my first archery elk was a 7x8 that's 350 inches. My big dog, that's a 10x10. So I officially have the ranch record out there at my buddy. It's Destry Harris of Harris Hunts. He's got multiple camps in Montana, and I'm super blessed. I've been, I think, going out there for, 18 years, I guess, or 18 plus years at this point. But that's the biggest one I've ever taken. That bull's a skosh over 370, and it's 10x10, believe it or not. So he's kind of got points all over, and hopefully these guys will be able to show it to you. But neat deal, too. He's got 2 sticker points, like little devil points, to make him a 10x10, and fairly proud of that one. It was, the show was just about over, and a lead cow come, and I ranged her, and she went by me at 70 or 71 yards. And I remember thinking, the whole herd's going to do that. And sure enough, they did, and they started stringing. He was about middle of the pack, and it was just like God intended it to happen, because he stopped him naturally at 71 yards, perfectly broadside. I had all the time in the world to aim, anchor, execute a shot, hit him good. Watched him run out into the center of a pivot and lay down, and a couple hours later, I had my hands on him. But that's my crown jewel, 10x10, like I said, 370-inch bull elk, straight out of Montana. All right, we're on to probably one of my favorite mounts, but my cat. Took him a few years back up in British Columbia. We were down in the Williams Lake area. Neat deal. I'd never done it. Had an invite from a good buddy, so I went and we went up there. Fun to watch it because it was a hound hunt. So those guys are super uber professional houndsmen. It was cool to see them work their dogs and just the terrain's rugged and tough. If you had fresh snow every day, they'd make it look easy. We did not have that. But day 5 of the hunt, they put him in a tree. I had kind of a mini mountain to climb up and get up there, but pretty neat to walk in and very intimidating to look up in a tree and realize you're about to take an animal that could literally jump out of the tree and kill everyone in about 3 seconds. But got 3 arrows through him in the tree. When he came out, he was plumb dead. He didn't even quiver. So kind of a neat deal, but right at 170 pounds, he was plumb empty when I got him. And I was just telling these guys, but that's something I learned is the weight of a cat can vary a ton depending on the last time they killed, because they don't leave their kills. They stay with it and just gorge themselves. But that area is known for the, huge cats. This one misses Boone and Crockett by just short of a 1/16 of an inch on the skull, and his skull had been damaged at some point, whether it was another tom maybe biting him when he was young, or truthfully, it looked like it had taken a 22 shell at some point. But I'm sure it was a fracture from another cat or a fight or whatever. But fun hunt, something I'll always remember. I think we were up there in mid-February when I took him up in British Columbia. We're going to start with my crown jewel mule deer. Been going out mule deer hunting with Destry Harris at Harris Hunts now for, same thing, probably the last 10 or 12 years. Always go for opener in hopes of catching them, still batched up and in velvet. And I'm going to get to a couple big velvet ones, but this is a deer that had been coined Twister. For pretty obvious reasons. When you really start looking at his rack, he's got a lot of stuff going on. A couple hooks, extras, a drop tine. It's my only deer I've ever killed with a drop tine. But super cool deal on him. It was no doubt 11-hour stalk. We stayed with him all day. That morning, he was in full velvet. We actually watched him shed virtually all of his velvet out that morning, beaten up on a sage bush. Then they went about 500-600 yards, him and another buck. They bedded in a sage patch. We worked around them, just stayed with them all day, baking out in the sun. And then that evening when they got up to move out and start grazing, I was fortunate enough, kind of a crazy thing. His buddy walked out right at like 62 yards. And then I don't know if the wind switched, I don't know what happened. But Twister boogered a little and did about 3 mule deer hops. And I'll be honest, I guessed him at 80, put my pin on and let her rip and 10 ringed him, thankfully. So he did a big loop and crashed after about 200 yards. But 194-inch mule deer might be the biggest one I ever get, and definitely earned that one. Like I said, it was an 11-hour stalk and something I'll never forget. Right above him is a deer that we coined as Woody, for obvious reasons. I won't get into that, but same thing, shot him opening morning that year. You'll notice he's like 170-ish mainframe 4x4, and then he's got like 14 inches of extra stuff. The stickers and flyers coming off. So kind of a neat deal. He's like right at 190, but full velvet. First full velvet deer I've ever taken. Great shot, 40-some yard stalk, or shot after we put the stalk on. Cool story with this is Woody was one of the deer in a bachelor group, and Wilson was another. So I don't know how we landed on Wilson for him. Woody, like I said, is pretty obvious. But the very next year, I went right back out there, and opening morning, we were socked in. It was so foggy, we literally sat in the truck and drank coffee, and I probably burned through a half tin of Skull Mint that morning, anxious, waiting to go, and couldn't see nothing. So we had to sit there and wait it out. Well, that afternoon, we glassed old Wilson up in a bachelor crew that was bedded in a sage flat. We snuck in, and we knew if he went left or if he went right, it was going to result in like a 70, 72-yard shot. Well, he ended up going left, almost picture perfect. Totally natural. He had no idea. Stopped, actually turned away, and I shot him. Great shot right behind the front shoulder, right in the crease. Big mule kick on video. Whirled out, and we watched him cartwheel, I guess, to his last breath. But it was a pretty cool deal to go back-to-back years on opening day. Same ranch, basically the same area. And like I said, the year before, those deer were running together. So felt like kind of closed the chapter on Woody and Wilson. Kind of the centerpiece of the whole house now is last year I was fortunate, went up to Alaska for a DIY moose hunt with some of my buddies, 2 of my buddies actually. Neat deal. I actually got to film him coming in on a Tacticam. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But first bull moose, for sure my bucket list, or top of my bucket list. Unbelievable hunt. He walked right in. I called him right into like 20 yards. Had like a 2-minute standoff, basically face to face. I was at full draw, and when he finally presented the shot, perfect shot, hit him in the heart. He was alive for, I can't remember if it was 23 or 27 seconds after the shot with my bow, but he only went like 40 yards, and I physically watched him tip over. So cool hunt. Probably the most adrenaline I've ever had pumping in my body at one time. But that all left shortly thereafter when you realize how much work it is quartering up and packing out a bull moose. But super cool. Can't wait to do it again. And if you ever get the chance to go to Alaska, I would highly encourage it. So this next deer, this is kind of a neat story too. This was on that Elm McKee farm I mentioned. I had tucked a food plot back in the timber up on a ridge, and I was hunting a deer that we had a ton of history with. He was a giant 10-pointer with deep split G2s, and he frequented that plot often, like actually all the time. And that's the deer I went in there for, but snuck in there. It's October 3rd. And like I'd mentioned, so this is super early season. We just opened October 1st. This is the 3rd, but it was unusually cold. We had a great cold front pulling through. If memory serves me right, it might have been like in the 40s, but cool. So I went in to hunt, expecting to see the other deer, and this one shows up. And I start looking at him, and this is well before dark. This is probably 5 o'clock, and I'm saying dark's at 7. And the more I looked at him, the more I realized, like, if that deer walks out, I can't not shoot him. I was trying to do all the math in my head and look at his body type and understand it. And 100% he was mature. And I was, I kept coming up with over 170. So he did end up walking out, kind of a chip shot, made a great hit. He crashed shortly thereafter, but come to find out, then I connected some dots that night when I started looking at him. Here I have his shed antler, or maybe even shed antlers from the previous couple seasons. So neat deal, because that same night, my buddy and partner I had in my archery business, he shot a great big buck. So kind of random, but for early season, October 3rd, it couldn't be more picture perfect than that. Like I said, that's a low 70s deer, a lot of character, real heavy, cool hunt, cool story, and the fact that Jim shot a deer the same night made it even cooler. Well, the last deer we're going to talk about here in the house is one that's probably maybe the coolest in my opinion, and I say that because it was the first deer I took with a bow that grossed Boone and Crockett. It's grossed over 170, grossed 172 5/8, number I'll never forget. Even to this day, it might be the only one I've truly officially measured. I took this one down to the Iowa Deer Classic. He was on the leaderboard right up until the end. I think he might have ended up in 5th even that year, but in either case, neat deal with him. That's a deer I'd seen a couple times before, and honestly, that's before I was diehard into cell cams or even trail cameras in general. But I'd seen him one other time, and I had 2 years of his sheds, the left side both times, the right side both times. And it's kind of weird, but like I found back-to-back years, I found his sheds like literally at the same fence jump. One year I found it on the west side, one I found it on the east side. I don't know how random that is, but it's something I'll never forget. But that day it was neat. It was super drizzly that day, and it was just dead calm, and I was down in a valley, and I remember it's back when everyone was using the can calls that got the Beatty buck killed, and it was so calm that day. Every 15-20 minutes I'd just crack that call a couple times, hit the grunt tube a couple times, and I'll be gosh danged if I didn't look back one time and that deer had his head down working a scrape, and all I could see was that right side down. It was facing me, and it just looked like a rib cage, just looked giant. And I just remember standing up as quick as I could. I was in a climber. That deer just progressed down the creek, and I ended up shooting him probably mid-30s. Hit him back. It was a bad hit. I would call it like liver guts. And we gave him overnight, snuck in there the next morning and recovered him. But obviously ecstatic about that deer because it was hands down or bar none the biggest deer I'd killed with a bow up until then. So I'm still pretty dang proud of him. And that's why he sits on that Iowa plaque my good buddy made. But deer, I'll never forget that one. That one's pretty near and dear to my heart. All right, moving into the garage. We got a little Euro mount collection in here, but we're going to start first off with my first Pope and Young whitetail. Shot this one as a kid, right here on the family farm. I can't even remember the exact score, guys, but it's whatever, mid-20s, 120s, 130, something like that. But I was ecstatic. That's a pretty neat little rack. He's got matching split twos. He's got an extra point coming off his base, and I thought I killed the world's biggest deer that day. But made a great shot on him, and I'll be honest, that's probably the start of when the disease really took off. Was that deer. It was the super cool hunt, rattled him in. He came right in, picture perfect, punched him at, 20 yards, ran off, got to recover him with my dad. Like, there's just a lot of good memories that are with that deer. And I would argue that's probably what really lit the fire. And I don't know what I was, 16, 17, maybe when I shot that deer. The rest of the deer in here, and I'm kind of like go Mach 90 on this. A lot of these deer are management deer. There's a lot of 8-pointers, big 8-pointers. And although they were awesome to hunt and fun to hunt, most of them we were taken to get them off the farm to make room, for 10-pointers or 6x6, 12-pointers, whatever. That's part of the management play. Not every year do you get to shoot a big headliner, and we won't shoot our big herd sires. Even if, we got a 3-year-old 160, we're going to roll the dice. We're going to let him go in hopes that at 4 or 5, he bounces up into the 170 or 180 caliber. But to have that, you got to take a lot of mature deer, and unfortunately, a lot of times they're big 8-pointers. So, but yeah, I'll go right down the row. Big 8 management deer, big 8 management deer, basically a big 8 management deer, shotgun. Now, full disclosure, that's a slick 6x6 that does run a tape right to 170 gross, but I did have to fix his horn. So if you really want to zoom in and look, it's this deer in that picture And that picture's near and dear to my heart because a good buddy of mine that I grew up with that's no longer with us, he's in that picture. He hunted with us for years, and that was one of our best group years ever. And I shot these deer in back-to-back drives. So pretty neat. Actually, this is even the slug that put this old boy down. Believe it or not, I shot that deer at like 6 yards. Basically ran right to me and I pounded him with a 12 gauge. Moving on. Big management junk. Big management junk. Deer that I shot a long time ago that probably shouldn't have got shot. Great genetics, but probably young, probably a 3-year-old. Same story here. I'm blaming it on my youth. Loved it at the time. That's why he's here. My daughter, Addie, that shot the big deer in the house. This is another one of her youth season deer. Nice little 10-pointer. Giant 8. Again, management junk. That one, though, full disclosure, I picked him up during shed season. I missed him. I'll admit it. I missed him late bow, and then I found him after gun season. So I don't know if he got dinged during our shotgun season or whatever, but I actually picked him up postseason. And then this deer, same thing. That was my second or third, I can't remember. That was very early on, and he got shot because of that twisted horn on the right side. And I shot him literally the eve of first gun season. So you couldn't go any later in the bow season. And believe it or not, he was pushing a doe hard that night. Came right in and then kind of chip shot him, but neat story. You can see most of these that have an arrow on them. That's the arrow that I took them with. I try to hang on to that stuff. I got a few more critters I'll show you guys out in our shop bar area, and that will conclude your time at the Headington Whitetail Crib. All right, so we've officially transitioned out into the war room. This is my shop and bar. This is the only one I bow killed out on this wall, but kind of a neat deal that downturn tine or brow tine got him shot. Fun, had him under me and videoed for, I don't know, minutes before I took him. It was a lot of fun. Everything else out here in this or in this row was a shotgun drive deer, with the exception of the very last one. Same thing, my wife Ashley took that one late muzzleloader 1 year. Got the topo maps, all the farms, and then the OG bow where it all started. Old Browning, bought that from I don't know, an acquaintance, but I got the bow and literally a bucket of old school aluminum arrows, and that's where it all started. But shot my first deer with that. So check out the bar. Well, welcome to our bar. So we're actually in my shed, but back in the day, I had an office in here that I actually, worked from home if I wasn't traveling. So we did this for basically entertainment purposes and whatnot. And I'm one of them guys, I got to leave the house to be at work. So, but this bar area, now I'm using this kind of as an overflow deer area, for lack of a better term, but a couple good ones in here. Shot that one out at my great aunt's. Neat deal. Kind of the start of when I really got big into watching trail cameras, but had that deer coming through a pinch a lot, slid in there. He tried sneaking behind me, but I won that battle. This is another neat one. Shot this deer. This is what I would consider my first big deer. It was the first deer I ever head mounted. So this one's really old, but super proud of that deer. Genetic freak. Obviously has a ton of points. I think 16 scoreable points, probably a monster 3-year-old, but at the time he was my best, and super proud of him. Directly above him's a deer we called Jesus. That was a little funny when I sent the group text out that Jesus is dead. I think you get it. But that was a neat story because shot him on November 2nd, which happens to be my wife's birthday. We went bow hunting together. We were double sitting in the tree. She almost got a crack at him, and he did a big loop around and ended up coming out on my side of the tree, and I shot him kind of right at last light. And he groaned when I shot him. Come to find out, I hit him in the heart, and it was just like a death roar. It was kind of weird, like a bear deal. And then the last whitetail in here, kind of neat. That deer's 24 inches inside, and he's got matching stickers off his G2s. And at the time when I shot him, he turned and looked at me, and I seen those matching stickers, and I was like 100% that deer's going down. So put an arrow on him. That was a good day. The one other thing I would mention, my moose story ran in Eastman's here a couple months ago. So we got that framed up. The stories in here, just kind of something for the memory bank, kind of like the pictures we keep. Maybe someday that'll get handed down to one of my grandkids or great grandkids or whatever, and they can say Grandpa was pretty cool. Look what he did in Alaska. Anyway, that's a wrap on this Whitetail Cribs. It's time for you guys to get out of here.